Brenda Jenkins, could you please give the invocation?
Thank you. I'm Brenda Jenkins from Crossroads Community Church. I thank you all for being here. Would you please join me in prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that you promise that where two or more are gathered, you are there in the midst. And we thank you, Lord, that you are among us today. And we celebrate the gift of life that you have lavished upon each and every one of us. We ask that you would open our ears so that we may hear your voice. Heavenly Father, we ask that your Holy Spirit lead and guide the City Council meeting this evening and grant divine wisdom upon the hearts of our councilmen and women as the ordinances and resolutions are read and voted on, that as our leaders, they will watch over and lead and guide their constituents and vote on the behalf of their people. Heavenly Father, Philippians 4:19 says, "And my God will meet all your needs according to his riches in Christ Jesus." And we thank you, Father, that you provide for all of our needs, and you have blessed our leaders with financial responsibility. And we ask that you watch over them and guide them with the best ideas and choices for their constituents. Give them ideas and ways to save even more money than they would ever dream possible. And Father, we are blessed to have leaders, our mayor, our city manager, our police officers, and our firefighters, and our councilmen and women that you have appointed to lead and guide Freeport. And we ask a special blessing over them, Father, that you grant them wisdom, Lord, that you watch over them when they go out on our behalf, Father, and grant them safety, Lord God. May you watch over them and minister to their spirits and keep them safe, Lord. We ask this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Thank you. So now we'll officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Alderpersons Borneman.
Here.
McClanathan.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Busker.
Here.
Brashaw.
Here.
Mysick.
Here.
And Berberet.
Here.
Thank you. And could you please stand and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderman McClanathan? Okay, so we will start with item number 1, which is the approval of the agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved. Second. Busker and Berberet.
Busker, Berberet.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Berberet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from the council meeting on June 3rd, 2019. Is there a motion for this approval?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Ross. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Public comment. David Mort. David, please, if you could go to the podium, and then you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Officer Mort. I'm with the Freeport Police Union. And tonight in front of you are union members who are young and old, those who live in town and those who live in surrounding areas. We're all present to show how we believe if this living radius ordinance would pass, it would cause lasting economic and department operational issues. This is a belief not just shared by us, but also by other fire and police department heads, as they have previously stated at these meetings. Police work nationwide has seen the sharpest drop in application rates at 66%. Freeport in 10 years has gone from about 70 applicants to 20 on average per testing process. As a result, the last time in negotiations, the union proposed and the council agreed to opening the live-in radius to 25 miles and expanding the lateral entry program. As a result, 3 employees now live outside the original 20 and have brought in 2 lateral entries that did not need academy or lengthy FTO training. Just 2 years later, the council now wishes to shrink that radius to 15 should anyone want a promotion or make a career out of the department. This is in contradiction to what many departments have done to entice new employees. The union understands that families must be free to decide what is best choice to balance family and employment. These choices are influenced by more spouses choosing to work, aging families, and the need to take care of their parents, and where their support network is the children living in the family of other towns. Another important note is the costs, both financially and operationally, this would have on the police department. On average, it costs the city approximately $65,000 to hire a brand new officer before they can be entrusted to protect the public. This includes the cost of the academy, the employer's wages, cost of training, and other health insurance benefits. The union recognizes it is very possible that the choices in response to changing the living radius will be made that would be best for each officer's family. If 5 officers leave the department, it would cost a minimum of $325,000 to replace those people. And the fire, in any different from a standard business, is that it costs more cost to effective to retain employees rather than to hire new ones. This would also put a constraint on the PD by working shorthanded, affecting public safety and overtime hire back costs. This also depends on the unmeasurable value placed on the experienced officer who has additional certifications, classes upon classes of training, and established connections with the community. Our fear is that any person wanting a first-time law enforcement job would jump at being hired despite the new radius, but after a few years leave after they have become desirable for other departments. Those that live outside the proposed living radius have not had issues with attendance, response time, or participation in work activities related to the location of their home. If an officer lives in town, they could easily not be home for the day, thus making the response the same. And one thing that I would add on to this too is that I've worked with many different departments from all over the United States, and I've been in law enforcement for approximately 32 years. Coming to Freeport was a challenge for me, but coming here, the one thing that I noticed is that these officers that work here, I cannot believe how dedicated that they are. They volunteer, they come in on their own time, they come in and they work special community events without getting paid, without asking for anything from anybody. And
David, your time is, we're very much exceeded, and we couldn't agree with you more. We have great guys that work and women that work.
All right.
We agree. And next we have Jacob Morados. Thank you, Jacob.
Evening. I'm Detective Jacob Morales, the Freeport Police Department. Continuing on with Officer Mort was saying, our fear is that any person who want to leave a first-time law enforcement job would jump at being hired despite the new radius. But after a few years, leave after they become other desirable to other departments. Those that live outside the proposed living radius have had not any issues with attendance, response time, or anything like that. We understand it cannot be a common belief that an officer lives closer to work. They are more connected or care about the community. We argue that it will always depend on the individual. As of now, you have a union and PD that participates in fundraisers, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. One Freeport officer is actually a football coach, a shop with a cop, Special Olympics, and other charity functions. These officers have put themselves before gunshot victims and the firearms used against them. These officers have suffered broken hands, broken feet, torn ACLs, dislocated shoulders, stitches, and other injuries. The public has come together to support the PD by dropping off random gift bags and tokens of appreciation from schools and churches. We assure you, no matter where we live, this department cares about the community. We stress that where an employee lives does not affect their work. We would be more than willing to sit down with any council member to discuss this matter further. However, the other council decides, we will take an honor is that it's your elected position to make these choices. We only cost you the consequences down the road.
Thank you. That concludes our public comments portion. We will move on to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. All the items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature unless there's an item that one of the council members would like to remove for further discussion. Is there any removals, council? Seeing none, item on the consent agenda is the approval to and place on file for the minutes of the Foreign Fire Insurance Board meeting from April 11th, cash and investment report from May 31st, 2019, the financial reports from the general fund, library, water, sewer sanitary sewer and the storm sewer funds for May 31st, 2019. Approval for the finance bills payable in the total of $964,539.16, as well as approval for the payroll for pay period ending June 8th, 2019, in the total of $554,775.47. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Misick, seconded by Alderman Busker. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Misick,
Aye.
Berbere,
Aye.
and Borneman.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 5 is recognition of retirees and promotion from the fire department. Chief Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Manager Crow, Barry Brashaw. Sally, you want to join us? It is my distinct honor and pleasure to be before you tonight and speak about Lieutenant Brashaw. Terry and I have been partners in crime on the fire department for almost 26 years. He has been my confidant, my friend, my brother. We've worked together a great portion of our career. He was hired in 1990. He was promoted to lieutenant September 29th of 2017. He has been one of the first 12 paramedics for the city of Freeport. He has been a member of the hazmat team for MAPES Division 17 in the city of Freeport for probably 15 years. He's a fire officer too. Terry has always demonstrated a can-do attitude. He's always been there for whatever special project needs to be done. He leads by example from the first day he started to the last day he left. He will be missed. We talked about having things that we've gone through this last year, and some of the things are pretty big ticket items as far as what we've accomplished. Losing men like Terry Brashaw is going to leave a hole in this department for a long time. Terry, congratulations to you and Sally. Enjoy your retirement. On behalf of the men and women of the Freeport Fire Department, thank you. Viewers.
Oh, I'd like to say a few words. Thank you, Manager Crow. Thank you, Mayor Miller. Thanks, department heads, city council members, especially my wife. She stood beside me all these years, and she's my rock behind it. Thank you to my firefighter family. They've been great, too. Especially thank you to Chief Townsend, Chief Hiseneff. We've been on a lot of calls together. Fires side by side on tough ambulance calls, and it's always good to have good people have your back. Anyway, be safe. Always keep Freeport first, and I'm going to have a good retirement.
Well, as it goes, we lose one to retirement. That creates a spot for promotion. And again, it's my distinct honor and privilege. Matt Powell, Chelsea. Matt was hired December 8th of 2006. He was promoted to lieutenant June 8th of 2019. Matt Kyle has an Associate's of Applied Science and Fire Science from Rock Valley College. He's a paramedic. He is one of the 3 arson investigators that we have here in the city of Freeport. He is also a major contributor to the MAPES Division 17 Technical Rescue Team, and he also holds certification in hazmat technician also, which is a double bonus for us because we can use him on both sides of that for the city of Freeport. He's a Fire Officer 1, and I honestly cannot think of a man more deserving than to be the lieutenant than Matt. I've had the privilege of working with him from the first day. He's watched me grow up as an officer, and I've watched him grow up to be quite a fireman, and he's a fine lieutenant. We're lucky to have him. Congratulations, Matt. behalf of the men and women of the Freeport Fire Department, we offer certifications. Congratulations. Few words?
Thank you, Chief, for those kind words, and thank you to the City Council for this recognition. I look forward to the challenge, and I'm very proud, and I just want to thank Chief Townsend. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
This is the fun part of being an interim chief. Unfortunately, I was going to introduce Joseph Tankey. He is our newest firefighter, sworn in last Monday, but duty calls. He's probably happy, but we're real happy to have him too. So thank you for indulging me with this.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations, Terry and Matt. Next is item number 6, which is an appointment. Madam Clerk, could you please read this?
Appointment of Dennis Carr to the U.S. Department of Agricultural Natural Resources Conservation Service Soil Conservation Technician Board.
Questions, Council?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
can you describe the appointment of what he's being appointed to, excuse me? The technician board?
Sure, Manager Crowe, can you do that?
So the U.S. Agricultural Natural Resources Soil Conservation Technical Board is the board under the county that reviews basically growth within the county as it relates to the impact of soil within the area. Retired Alderman Clem was the previous appointment to the board. It's more of a technical look at the requirements for soil, for growth, and for drainage within the city, within the county.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Parker. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Next is a presentation by FHN Family Counseling.
I don't normally use microphones. All right, well, thanks for having me here tonight. My name is Dana Gerard Laymeyer, and I work with the FHN Family Counseling Center Prevention Department. So I do a variety of programs with the youth in Freeport and Stephenson County. The overall goal is to prevent youth drug and alcohol use. And so today I wanted to take some time to go over the results of the Illinois Youth Survey. If I can figure out, there we go. All right, so the Illinois Department of Human Services has put on this survey every other year since 1993. So the most recent year that we've administered it was 2018. It's administered to 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders. The reason that we administer it to those grades is because those are what's considered transition periods for students. So 8th graders, of course, are moving out of being in elementary and middle school and are moving into high school. 10th graders, of course, are driving, which is terrifying, and 12th graders, of course, are looking at moving into adulthood and college. In Stephenson County, all schools were offered the opportunity to administer this survey to their students, and each school participated except for Pearl City. In Dakota, only the 10th grade class participated, and in Lena, only the 8th graders participated. So when we say Stephenson County, if you look at data and data-wise, we're really looking a lot at Freeport. That's where the majority of the students were who took the survey. The survey was administered to the high school, middle school, and Carl Sandburg, which at the time was still housing 8th graders. Male to female ratio of those surveyed was almost exactly 50-50. You can see there the breakdown of race and ethnicity of those that took the survey. And the living situation, which was more for the counseling center's purposes and for DHS's purposes, kind of gives us an idea of exactly the situation that our students are living in. All right, so I'm going to go through some numbers here, and bear with me. I'm not a numbers person. But we're going to get through this together, all right? So We look at past 30-day use within the counseling world, and past 30-day use is what is considered current users of various substances. We have a breakdown here of Stephenson County versus the state. Our 8th graders are pretty well below for alcohol usage the state average, which is 15%. Stephenson County is at 11%. With the 8th graders, one of the primary areas of concern for us is our marijuana usage. The state average for marijuana usage is 5%, and Stephenson County is at 7% among our 8th graders. So even though that still means the majority of our 8th graders are not using marijuana, that means that there is a percentage that is, and it's higher than the state average. So that's an area that we're concerned about. Our 10th grade past 30-day use data, our 10th graders have much higher rates of use than our 8th graders. Again, 24%, which is slightly above the state average for alcohol use. E-cigarette usage, which is vaping or juuling, if you've heard those terms, are at 15% in Stephenson County compared to 18% in the state. Our cigarette usage is very low, and that's pretty much nationally. We see cigarette usage is very low. Our marijuana usage is at 16%, and the use of prescription drugs to get high is at 6%, which is very high above the state average for our purposes. So that's another area that we're concerned with. Our 12th graders have some of the lower numbers as far as the state average. Our alcohol uses is approximately 34% compared to 40%. E-cigarette vaping is 21%. Marijuana is 18%, which is below the state average. And then the good news for us is that our cigarette and prescription drug usage among our seniors is well below the state average at 1%. All right, so there's a question on the survey, which is also 100% anonymous, so the students don't have to worry about if they admit to using something, they don't have to worry about getting in trouble for that. This is just so that we can eventually help them. So we keep these surveys anonymous. One of the questions that we ask is, how harmful do you believe a substance is, or how much harm do you think you are causing yourself by using different substances? Overwhelmingly, students believe that the most harmful substance you can use is cigarettes or prescription drugs, which are two widely different things. Cigarette usage, if you talk to any teenagers, and in fact I encourage you, if you have a teenager in your life, ask them what they think about cigarettes, and I guarantee you they will say they're nasty, they cause lung cancer, I would never do that. But then ask them what they think about vaping, and that's totally cool. So our perceptions of harm, of course, cigarettes are viewed as the most risky, and this is another area of concern because there's obviously more education that needs to go into that. Vaping and marijuana are viewed as very low risk, and there's a good reason for that. There's really not a lot of research on vaping. Vapes are viewed as safe. Some students even believe them to be healthy. More and more states, and now of course it looks like our own as well, are legalizing marijuana. As marijuana is legalized, the view that it's a risky substance is going down quite a bit. As medical marijuana continues to be touted, more and more students aren't seeing marijuana as something that is, number one, even a drug, but also that it's not dangerous and that in fact it can be healthy to use marijuana. So this is an area of concern from us, especially as we look at the new year and new laws that are being passed, and we're trying to find out how we can educate our youth a little bit more that even though a substance is legalized, does not make it healthy or safe. And then just a note on our parents. So 40% of 8th grade parents are not talking to their students about alcohol. 41% are not talking about marijuana. 49% are not talking about tobacco usage. 53% of 8th graders say that they would most likely not be caught by their guardians if they drank. As someone who grew up with strict parents, that blows my mind, but that is a really high percentage of students that are not being monitored by their parents. And then 30% of 8th grade parents are saying that their guardians do not always know where they are. Our 10th graders, 41% of parents are not speaking about alcohol use, 45% are not speaking about tobacco use, 38% are not speaking about marijuana use. The good news with our 10th graders, again, as they're starting to drive, is 65% of parents are telling them not to drink and drive and not to get into a vehicle with someone who has been drinking. Our 12th grade students, 46 are not talking about alcohol, 51 are not talking about cigarettes, and 47 are not talking about marijuana. A lot of parents believe that because 12th graders are now going into college and becoming adults, they don't need to speak about substance use, and the opposite is actually true. Going into college is a time where students need to be reminded about healthy behaviors. So what are some things that are being done and what else can be done? So from FHN at the Family Counseling Center, we do what is called youth prevention education, and we do a program called All Stars. If you have students who are in a Stephenson County middle school, they might have talked to you about this because we've probably spoken to them. So we go into the schools and we speak about healthy lifestyles and the dangers of drug use. We also have communication campaigns. Any posters that you see that have the FHN logo on them and say something about the dangers of alcohol use or drug use comes from our office. We are continuing through the use of these communication campaigns and the use of our prevention education. We encourage students to live healthy lifestyles. We encourage decision-making skills because that's really at the core of substance use is how you make decisions. And we try to get our students to think about their futures and what it's going to take for them to have the future that they want. As well as we work with parents of young children in our office. These are our parent educators, and they go into the home of parents who have babies through 3 years old, and they try to encourage them to bond with their children and encourage communication between parents and children. As far as what needs to be done, we really need to be doing a lot of communicating, and this is both on a citywide, countywide level, and an individual level. It's very important, and study after study is showing that one of the most important messages students get is from their parents and from their guardians. And so we need to be communicating about the dangers of drug and alcohol use. We need to be encouraging parental involvement. Again, that's another factor. It's considered a reducing harm if parents are involved in our students' lives. And as far as at the citywide level, any policies that we discuss that regard anything to do with drugs or alcohol, we really need to take into consideration our youth. And we need to decide if the policies that we're passing are going to even indirectly make it easier for our young people to get a hold of alcohol or drugs. So some resources, if you're interested in this further, there are some online resources. We also have created a booklet that is the state of our youth and our use. It's on the table there, so if you would like to grab one of those on your way out, please feel free to. Of course, you're always welcome. If you have more questions about this, the Family Counseling Center is like right there, and you can stop by at any point, and we're happy to talk about what we're doing and maybe what can be done, and we're always open to new partnerships and new ideas of what can be done in the city. So are there any, if this will click, are there any questions?
Mayor?
Cool.
Alderman McClenathan.
Thank you for the presentation. Just briefly, because I assume you probably, looking at who was all involved in regards to the survey, you're going around different areas in the community giving similar presentations. What is the general, outside of providing information and statistics to the various entities for some decisions down the road, what are these steps that your organization is looking for from the community and is also looking to do when taking this information into account?
Well, what we're really looking for from our communities is partnerships. We, for example, in Freeport right now, we just did a program in a lot of the churches in the area called My Generation RX, and that was talking about safe medication practices in the home. And so within the community, we're really looking to churches, we're looking to community leaders to partner with us, as well as if there's any ideas, because things can constantly be improved. If anybody has any ideas of programs that they know of that they would like to bring to the community, we are open to talking about them and deciding if those would fit in with what we're trying to get out to the community.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. My question is, how are you reaching out to these parents of the children, other than through the churches, that perhaps are having some of the problems in the substance abuse? Often there are people that are hard to reach from the schools, and the schools don't want to pinpoint certain demographics. So how are you reaching out to those parents of these children?
I'd say that is an area that we're looking to improve in because it is difficult. My office's 0 to 3 program, so our parents of young students, that's one way that we are young children. I work with students, young children. So that's one way that we are directly reaching parents. But of course, parents of the older children are hard to reach. And that's something that we're trying to work on and find out more about how we can speak directly with parents. Unfortunately, when you have programs for parents, it's a certain type of parent that shows up to those programs. And so we're trying to find ways that we can widen our net of who we speak with.
Follow up? Thank you. Well, we experience this in our community quite often, that the parents that do reach out and show up to the PTA meetings and the band kids meetings and stuff, these are the responsible parents. But how do we reach those other parents? That's been a problem in our school system. When people are saying our school system is failing, it's not true. We have a great school system. We have a horrible parental system in our community. But we need to figure out, reaching out with you, how we can reach these parents of the troubled youth, the ones that are willing to experiment with the drugs and the alcohol on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, and we are working with that, and a lot of that is through, and sometimes it can seem very futile, especially when you work in the human services field. It's a pretty thankless job, and so we are trying to work with parents, and we're trying to find how we can reach parents, but it is hard, and we're still trying to find the perfect solution to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council?
Madam Mayor,
Yeah, Alderman Borman.
thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Do you have any type of relationship currently with the police department when, in fact, a youth is arrested for an offense? It'd be easy way to get a hold of the parent and for you to get their contact information.
Not in that way. We do have a relationship with the police department through a couple of different programs that we do, but that is a very good idea worth pursuing. So there's a lot of you here, so let's talk.
And a follow-up, have you developed any relationship with the Stephenson County Probation Department, the Youth Probation Department?
We have not, and that's another very good point of contact. We're prevention, and so a lot of ours, and we're looking to improve, but a lot of our focus is that preventative. And so most of the times when a youth is arrested or when a youth is caught, they enter into the intervention field, and so that is becomes the responsibility of our clinicians and our counselors. But if we can find a way to enhance those partnerships to help with the prevention field, we would certainly be interested.
Great.
Thank you, Dana.
All right,
We
thank you.
appreciate that. Next, we will have the presentation from Greater Freeport Partnership.
Good evening. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm just going to talk to you for a little bit. So you get our monthly reports that come in your packets, and you should be all getting a weekly email from me kind of talking about what we have going on. If you're not getting that, let me know. I also want to make sure everyone knows we do have 2 weekly emails that go out to really anybody can be on that distribution list. The first one that goes out on Mondays, and that is what's going on event-wise and with the partnership and different, not necessarily events, but business activities and things like that. The other one goes out on Thursdays, and that is events that happen in the community. So you can plan your weekend, we get the Thursday email. Anyone can be on that, just let me know and we'll put you right on that in case you are not already. And you can opt out if you get tired of hearing from us. I want to just give you pull out a couple of things from some of those reports, a little more detail for you. I look at my list and it seems to really focus on downtown Freeport, which is one of the things that the partnership is focusing on. The first one is beautification of downtown Freeport. So hopefully you've seen the flowers, the hanging baskets, the plants, different things. The business owners, the partnership, and the city all came together to fund and get those things hanging, and we'll maintain them all summer, and that's a really nice thing to have. I don't happen to be a flower person, but I like the color, and I like to see that in my neighborhood. The other initiative that Andrea Winter talked with you about last month is what's called street furniture. That's the garbage cans and benches and such like that. We did receive a grant for the first phase of that, a small grant from the Community Foundation of Northern Illinois. We matched that with partnership funds, and then we got a donation from the Lindo Theater owner to just go ahead and fund the first phase of that. So we'll have, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 2 benches and some garbage cans. Those have been ordered. I hope they show up. They will show up by Brewfest, possibly by Cruise Night, but don't hold me to that. But that's going to be a multi-year phased in sort of thing. It's about a $40,000 ask. City is involved in that with Dennis and Manager Crow with removing the old stuff and installing the new. So it's a really nice partnership between the business owners, partnership in the city. I've been talking to Manager Crow a bit about the city center streetscape plan, and we're gonna work together on seeing what we can do about trying to get some funding rolling to get that big project done. But that's gonna take some time to get going, but that's a priority, certainly. Last month, you all approved the Downtown Revitalization Loan Fund. I want to let you know how we're marketing that to get the word out. You'll see a press release. There's been some, we've talked about it in our blogs and so forth. There'll be a press release, but in general, it's going to be marketed to developers and real estate agents, to banks and financial planners, people who might have money to invest in the downtown. Lots of one-on-one conversations and different ways to get the word out that that tool exists to help spur investment in our downtown. We're working with the city and Stephenson County on the census. There's committees being formed to work on communication. Certainly the Census Bureau is hiring people to do the counting, but we want to make sure that people understand how important it is to be counted, particularly on the funding side. State and federal dollars are allocated, a lot of them are allocated based on population. So it's a really important initiative that Manager Crow has already kicked off here in the city. Partnerships working with the county. We're all working together and on a regional basis to use the best practices there. And our big thing that we are constantly working on is workforce development and the issue of lack of skilled workers in Stephenson County and regionally. We've got a couple of initiatives going there. We had a good group of people come together over the last quarter regularly to talk about where can we find groups of people that are not employed or underemployed. Talked about different groups, settled in on what can we focus on, and that group is returning citizens, or as some, formally referred to as formerly incarcerated, or people with prior involvement in the justice system. We have a number of employers who are currently and are open to employing this group of people, but sometimes there are additional training requirements or things that go on with that. We're working closely with the Stephenson County Probation Department as they put out a new class for certain people on probation to learn some job readiness skills. So we're working with them in terms of liaisoning to employers. So that's going on. We have a group, and then we have another group that will just start meeting. We want to attract back the people that have left us. Late 20s, mid 30s, professional people. I'm looking at you, Alderman Borneman. People who grew up here already know how great it is. How do we get them to come back? So we're starting that off with a little bit of a focus group of that particular demographic and asking them why they came back. And then we're going to start putting out some marketing materials for that group to tell their friends who aren't here to come back and join them. That group of volunteers, though, will continue to work on the reasons why that particular demographic may not choose to come back here. Amenities, housing, different things that we could address and work on. So those are the kinds of things we're working on, a little more detail than you get in the weekly email. But I wanted to give you that update and then really answer questions about what we have going on in the partnership.
Thank you, Rebecca. Questions, Council?
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Ms. Motley, I was reading through your quarterly report or weekly report, I guess it is, and with great interest. I saw that you met with 4 individuals who are interested in starting businesses in Freeport. How do you find these folks? Do they come and approach GFP, or do they look you up, or how do you find the people?
Well, a combination. A lot of them actually just find us. We're walking in, looking for Chamber of Commerce online, and they come in. There's a number of people come into the city, and the city says, go on down the street, talk to the Greater Freeport Partnership. We are working on setting up some systems to really support these folks. One of those things will happen in August. We're going to have probably a quarterly meeting that pulls together banks, the city, the inspectors, different support systems for new entrepreneurs to meet all in one place so they can get a good start to their business. So there's a real, that 4 last week, I would call that a reasonable average. There's a lot of people interested to figure out how to support them. The loan fund is one way to do that.
That's great. Can I do one more follow-up? Thank you. This is a little bit off topic. I see also that you distributed concierge bags to Freeport hotels to be gifted to VIPs and people looking to relocate. How do they determine if those folks are the ones that are wanting to relocate to Stephenson County?
Sometimes the hotels know because the company that booked the room for their guest. We're more than that. That's kind of a handful of things. More than that, we're proactively reaching out to HR departments and saying, are you trying to recruit people? Let us give them gifts. Let us take them on tours. Let us help you show off the community. So that's a little piece of that, but it's much more about trying to get employers to know that we're here to help you tell the great story. Drive them around, show them the breweries, whatever they're interested in.
I'm glad you're doing that. It is a nicety that would make people think Freeport's welcoming and perhaps, reach out to some of the area vendors that are contributing to those bags. I appreciate that you.
Yeah, our businesses were all over that. They wanted to give us stuff. They did that for Honeywell when they were trying to recruit. It's a great way to showcase our businesses. There's a lot of opportunity. We've got a great group of ambassadors, a range of ages and demographics, so we can match them up with the kind of person that the business is trying to recruit. They'll show them the schools or the houses, whatever they're looking for.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Clanathan.
thank you. You referenced some of the groups that you're working with and some of the areas that you're targeting. What's the status of the organization working with the school systems on workforce and basically like pipeline development?
So we had a meeting with the school district on and groups of businesses to talk about what those academies will be, with some input on the businesses, from the businesses rather. The school district had to go back and do some stuff. Next week we're back to a meeting about how do we get the word out about academies that'll start this fall. So the partnership's going to help the school district communicate what academies are, what opportunities there are to get involved. And then the next step of that is where are the places the businesses can plug in. So that's how we're supporting that effort. So that is an ongoing effort. We just haven't met in the last couple of months while the school has worked with their teachers and curriculum.
Any other questions, Council?
Madam Mayor,
Yeah, Alderman Borneman.
you mentioned the term returning citizens, which is a new kind of definition of what formerly known as incarcerated people with criminal records. What is returning citizens? Is that specific to people who used to live in Freeport, or is that
No, it's actually, it's new language put out by the federal government and the Workforce Connection field. It doesn't have anything to do with returning to society. It's not people returning to Stephenson County necessarily. However, as you know in your line of work, when people are released from the prison in other parts of the state, almost all of them come back to the place that they were arrested in because they have to have a place to live and or a place of employment. We are working with the probation department right now on they have over 500 people in Stephenson County on probation today. Of that 500 people, certainly many of them are employable, I would say, if they're not already employed. So that's the piece that we're working with right there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-33. Madam Clerk, would you please read this?
An ordinance amending Chapter 1440, Administration Generally, Section 1440.02, Building Commission of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, reducing the number of members of the Building Commission.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we had discussed in the previous council meeting, this is to reduce the number of members on the Building Commission by 1 from 10 to 9. The Building Commission is made up of is chaired by myself. It's made up of contractors as well as the building inspector and a structural engineer. As a holdover from the old strong mayor, there was a position assigned for an alderman. We are requesting to remove that position, drop the number from the board size from 10 to 9 to allow a better execution and better working on the board. These are professionals that sit on the board that work on the building codes, and I'll stand by for any questions.
Council.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
thank you. This isn't necessarily a question. This is just a statement for the public that we did cover this in our Committee of the Whole meeting and discussed why you thought it would be best that you would be on it rather than a council member, because you do work for the council. And some of those decision-making items are very important to understand, and you have the grasp of that since you do run the city. Did I say that correctly?
Well, I'm actually appointed by the mayor to chair this.
Okay, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mayor.
And the one of the concerns we had was, so one of my bosses is actually, as the chair, I run the committee council, so what my concern is that one of my bosses would be answering to me on the committee.
Thank you. And so, Mayor, I guess my question would be to you, and you think this would be best practice then also?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Misick,
Aye.
Berberet,
Aye.
and Borneman.
Aye.
That ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 10 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-34. Could you please read this?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport approving and authorizing the city to enter into a lease purchase agreement with Deere Credit Incorporated for a lawnmower.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the approval of the lease that we have for the mower for the airport. This is the mower came off the state bid and is used for a mower that died early this year, and so we can continue mowing out at the airport. And you had previously approved the lease prior to the first reading, so standing by for any questions.
Mayor,
Alderman Ross.
I'd like to make the motion to go ahead with the,
Actually, we don't need to at second reading. So if there isn't any questions, comments, then we'll just go to a vote.
okay.
Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2019-34?
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross, Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Misick,
Aye.
Berberet,
Aye.
and Borneman.
Aye.
And that ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-35. Could you please read this one?
An ordinance amending Section 480.24, handicapped persons and disabled veterans of the codified ordinances of the city.
Thank you. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As was said a few weeks ago, this is a parking spot over in the arcade. It's on the 14th Avenue. The homeowner there has actually come in and spoke to me asking for us to remove the handicap parking in front of their house. It was originally placed there for his wife, who is now since been deceased, and so due to that, he'd like the handicap sign taken down.
Any further questions, Council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Misick,
Aye.
Berberet, and Borneman.
Aye.
That motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 12 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-36. Could you please read this?
An ordinance amending Section 480.20, 2-hour parking locations of the codified ordinances of the city.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This was, as we had discussed previously, that this is the removal of the parking, 2-hour parking signs in front of City Hall and along the side of the church. We're finding the 2-hour parking was originally set up when this was the Carnegie Library to limit the amount of time. We're finding that with our business and boards, that people are having to park longer out in front of the building. And also this gives an opportunity for the Masonic Lodge across the street, Temple, to use the parking and not be subject to ticketing in this area. This was requested by a couple council members to be considered here, and our recommendation is to go ahead and approve this.
Council. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2019-36?
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berberay.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
And another ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 13 is the first reading of ordinance 2019-37. Could you please read this?
An ordinance amending City of Freeport Code of Ordinances, Title VI, Administration, Chapter 240, Police Department, Section 240.09, Appointments, Subsection H, Residency Requirement, and amending City of Freeport Code of Ordinances, Title VI, Administration, Chapter 242, Fire Department, Section 242.25, City Residents.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As requested by the council, so as we get to this, I'll talk about, this is the ordinance that talked about residency. We talked about it back in October. We brought it forward again. I just want to remind everybody, this is strictly for non-union. I request that no discussions as it relates to the contracts go forward on the, we should not discuss anything dealing with residency with either union since we are in contract negotiations with them. So this is strictly non-union, and what you have behind you are the two circles. Yellow is the current 20-mile that the police use. The fire department uses the 4 townships. The 15-mile is where it would go to. As you see, we encompass quite a bit more than just the 4 townships. Now, part of this ordinance is based upon the Melrose Park ordinance, which was the Illinois Appellate Court recently interpreted a municipal ordinance residency requirement to uphold the municipal's termination of a firefighter for failing to comply with the requirement. We took their ordinance as the basis for this. What this does is it grandfathers everybody that's in their current location. They will not be subject to that. This is strictly applies to new hires as we come in for the residency as requested by council, or if the member moves, he or she has to move within the 15 miles. The one thing is that also there is a provision that if they are promoted, they have to move within the 15 miles in the ordinance. Chief Townsend's has expressed a concern about this with consistency between the fire and police. And then Chief Barklow has also expressed a concern about his ability to recruit quality officers. And both of those expressed their concerns at the committee of the whole. They are asking for the residency for promotions. Is the residency to be grandfathered for those that are the current hires in the current locations? I'm standing by for any questions.
Council.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Borneman.
Okay, so I want to start off just to make sure everyone is on the same page. Right now, anybody employed as a fireman or in the police department in any capacity outside of any sworn officer would be required to stay with the 20-mile radius if they were at one point promoted.
No, that is incorrect.
Okay.
So the fire ordinance currently says, and this is strictly non-union, this. So the union is determined by the contract. Current ordinance for firefighters are the 4 townships in the city of Freeport and the 4 townships surrounding it. We are proposing that be increased to the 15 miles, which is already set forward. But those that live outside that area, that are non-union, be grandfathered into this ordinance. We do have some officers that are non-union that are living outside of that 15 miles.
So follow up, no one would be required to move as this ordinance is passed today, unless there was a promotion or a new hire.
Promotion, new hire, or they buy a new house.
Right, so the move portion of this.
Yes.
Okay, one of the questions I had, if I could continue, was just that term move. I didn't know if that was specific enough based on the case you mentioned. I see
Melrose Park.
We used a lot of the definitions there. I don't know if we need something more specific than move, because it is somewhat vague. So I thought maybe that's something we could.
I'm going to turn to Attorney Zito, who drafted this based upon the case.
Right. I don't think the term move was necessarily defined in the Melrose case there, but certainly if we want to put a definition for what it means to move, I think when I drafted this, we were using the term move as if a officer, whether fire or police, voluntarily says, hey, I like that house over there instead, or I'm voluntarily moving, but I still want to be employed at my job or whatever it is. I'm not looking to switch jobs. That they would at that point have to move within the required 15-mile radius. So if we can spell that out, if the council wants, we can add a definition of what it means to move.
Okay, I don't think it could hurt, right?
Certainly not.
Okay.
Alderman Berberet.
Manager Crowe, not having all the history, should I assume that the reason there are different residency distances between fire and police is through their negotiation process with the...
So I've actually asked both chiefs, and I know Chief Townsend actually said he's not sure why there is a difference between fire and police in the current ordinances. Those are ordinances that are on the books that have been going back. They've been on there for quite a while, and I think it had to deal with the initial response time, but it was never updated when response times changed. Do you want to add anything to that, Scott?
Well, the only thing I'm going to add is that our ordinance, the way it was written, was actually approved back in 1995. Okay, so when I was hired, it was the 4 townships, and that was pretty much citywide. Since then, bargaining units have bargained what they've done. The firemen were the first ones to expand the residency to 15 miles and then eventually to 20 through the contract. But the non-bargaining has always stayed at the 4 townships. Why, I don't know. And then in 2005, for some reason, the cops ordinance changed to what it currently reads, which is 20 road miles from the police station. And I wish I could answer that, but I was asleep at the wheel, or somebody was, because I don't understand why they wouldn't have both public safety departments be the same.
So if you're in the union, if you're in the union, you have one residency requirement. If you're a non-union employee, you have another one.
That's correct.
And if you want to go from being in the union to a non-union position by promotion, that would change also unless this grandfathers you in.
No, currently they have to, under our current ordinance, they have to move inside.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
thank you. If they were offered that promotion, they would have the choice at that time to either accept the promotion and move within the parameters required, or they would have to turn down the promotion?
That's correct.
So if I went to look at a house outside of my ward and I would move to Ward 1, I'd have to step down from council, is that correct?
It's correct. In fact, we had Alderman Smith did that.
So I'd have to give up my $3,800 salary?
We're sorry, Sally.
Oh, I'll stay where I'm at, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Parker.
I'm just gonna voice, I did a week ago, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I understand that firemen and police should be the same. Let's move the firemen up to the 20 miles and not cut the police. And I think some of the officers that spoke tonight made it very clear that we need to make this more acceptable, and it's getting too easy to move on to another job somewhere, and now the state police have a fast track program coming up. And once you're certified, you only go down for 13 weeks instead of 26 weeks to be a state trooper, and they don't have any boundaries. So I can't support it unless we leave it at the 20 and move the firemen up to the 20 where the police are. I totally agree they should be equal, so thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. And one of the reasons, well, actually the main reason that we're having to address this tonight is because unfortunately the system is broke, at least largely on one department. If you look at the well, if you look at the system in regards to that, we've had those requirements, as you said, since 1995 of the 4 townships, and it was brought to our attention within the last year, about 9 months ago, 8, 9 months ago, that we have a large amount of individuals who aren't currently in compliance with that, and including one out of, I think at least one out of state, which is obviously well outside of that. So the question becomes, you know, what do we do in regards to this? There was a strong opinion on the part of the council that would not be punitive as we put this into place. For instance, like the Melrose Park one, where they're talking about firing people who are out of compliance. Nobody on the council expressed a desire to be looking to fix this situation by that. There's also a strong preference that we say, okay, non-union for police and non-union for fire are out of whack. So it makes more sense to have them both be in compliance rather than have 4 separate mechanisms, you know, being 4 townships for non-union on fire, 20 for union on fire, 20 for non-union on police, and then 25 for union on fire. So to bring some uniformity, at least on the non-union level, on there. There's also been, if you look at department heads, the council had made, actually, when we went to the city manager form of governments, there was an agreement that with department heads moving forward, they would reside within the city of Freeport. And that's, at some times there were some misgivings. Some folks said, is that going to lead to any difficulties in recruiting talents and recruiting individuals? And I'd say we actually had a very smooth transition and a good team around the table. I mean, just last Friday, driving home, I won't say who it was, but I was driving on one of the roads and saw one of the department heads at his residence and outside his residence. And as I traveled further down the road, I realized there's still a lot of potholes on his road, and so you know he's hitting those as well. So there's been an expressed desire to, as you're moving up in responsibility, to be closer to the city of Freeport. However, and I've heard that expressed by many of my colleagues in regards to this. However, I've also heard the sentiment expressed, let there be some compromise here, because there are family situations. There are a variety of factors that need to be taken into consideration. So it was very important that and also people have made decisions today based on the rules that are in place today. And so it's very important that we say, when we're looking at this ordinance, how do we not negatively impact those who are residing under those rules, that they made a choice when they came into the department, that these were these rules when they're on here. So the way this ordinance is proposed and structured is, it does move up the fire restrictions, because right now, as Manager Crowe said, those 4 townships would all be within that red radius there, and in fact, a substantially smaller portion on it. It does restrict 5 miles on the police in regards to that at the non-union level. So it is a middle ground in between the 2 as they currently stand. However, what I think is very important to note is subsections Roman numerals 2 and 3 talk about the fact that if you're a current officer, we're talking about the police in regards to this one. If you're a current officer on the police and you live within that 20-mile radius, which I think they all do, I'm sorry, officer, I should say, non-union management. If you are within that 20-mile radius, which I believe they all are as of today, they don't have to move. They can still continue to stay at that residence within that 20-mile radius. However, they do decide to move, it's got to be within the 15-mile radius. Same thing for union officers who are promoted to management level. That's in subsection Roman numeral 3. That says if you are a member of the police department prior to the effective date of this ordinance change, you may maintain your residence, provided it's within that, what is today's standard, 20-mile radius for being management. However, in the event that you choose to move, then you'd comply with the 15-mile radius. So nobody that's under the current rules as they apply today, let's say we didn't have this ordinance, that we left it, again, in one department largely a mess with compliance on that. Everybody's situation would stay the same. I realize we have a disparity with a few officers in regards to the difference between the union as it is today and the non-union today. That's an issue would have to be addressed one way or the other, whether or not we touch this ordinance. This ordinance is only looking forward, not looking at punishing anybody back, getting us to a uniform standard, and getting into compliance going on down the road. I believe it's the least punitive, softest way that we can get some uniformity as well as get everybody into compliance and make sure we're moving forward in compliance down the road. Those other issues those other issues are going to have to be addressed on another day for those small situations that are not currently addressed under either the proposed ordinance or under the current ordinance. So I hope that gives some history as to what we're trying to accomplish here, who it does impact, who it doesn't impact, and really convey the intent that we're looking at moving at how we establish business moving forward, not looking at, okay, somebody's out of compliance today, let's bring the hammer on them, because that's not the intent at all.
Your Honor,
Alderman Parker.
just a quick question for you. So if you have an officer, non-union, lives 20 miles out, and if he decides to move, then he's required to move within the 15 miles. Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
Yes, listening to this, a lot of good points have been made. I'm thinking that I'm going to look at it a little differently, that what are we doing as in this city that I'll ask it of the officers, and don't need to respond here, but if you feel like you want to approach me with it, I'd really like to have the conversation is, what are we doing as a city here that you wouldn't want to live here? Our housing stock, the prices of the homes are definitely affordable for what we would pay management. I'm just looking at it from a different angle here as to, what could we change to keep our employees to also want to be residents here, is kind of another way, because clearly we've got to make something that's uniform for everybody, but why do we even need to have this conversation? What is not enticing about the city of Freeport is what I'd like to know.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Borderman.
Mr. Busker brings up a good point. If it were up to me and a lot of people in the public that I've spoken to, is a lot of people are shocked that you have city employees who don't live in the city, and some who don't even live in our county. And we have Rebecca Motley here talking about how we need to encourage people to return home, live in Freeport. And as she's standing there, there's a room full of people behind her who are upset with the fact that they even would force a situation would be forced on them where they might have to live within 15 miles of the town. So it's borderline, as someone who's from Freeport, grew up here, came back, cares about the community, it's borderline insulting to have it's such a big deal that people don't want to live in a city where they work and, you know, who pays their paycheck. Now, I mentioned the people here. It's a room full of my friends, so I hope that it's not taken personally because I work with all of you, and I hope you understand that I'm not directing this towards any particular person. It's just the idea, because growing up in Freeport, there's always been this qualifier about the town that, you know, it was fun last night. Yeah, for Freeport. You know, that's a great restaurant. Yeah, for Freeport, it's a good restaurant. This qualifier. So it's a frustrating thing to deal with. And like I said, if it were up to me, all employees, whether you're working for the, you know, Public Works, the mayor's office, any of the you know, the services, the police or fire, you'd have to live in town. I understand that's not the case, and I respect their decisions for that. I know personally that it would be tough doing the responsibilities that the officers do on a daily basis to, in certain situations, shop at a store, or, you know, maybe you don't want your children going to certain schools, and I respect that, and I think I can understand that more than most on the council. But at the same time, I do see the benefit to public relations, and I'm not knocking what our relations are now. I understand we have a great police force, and I'm sorry I'm not that familiar with fire, but when it comes to the police department in general, you know, no one's saying that the jobs they're doing a bad job or we need to improve public relations, but I find it hard to believe that living in the community with the people you police would not help improve public relations. But with all that being said, I don't understand where these numbers are coming from. What is 20 miles? What is 15 miles? Where did we decide this? To me, it'd be more logical if we said you have to be a resident of, let's say, the county, or, you know, if we're not going to go into the city. So I don't really have a question. It's just kind of my point. I wanted to let my frustration be put on the record. And I do think we need to, like Mr. Parker said, we got to fix this. The department should be even. It doesn't make sense that one's a township and one's 20 miles. But we're going to have to make a decision. And if it were up to me, it would just be a residency requirement in the city.
I can't address, so I talked with Attorney Sosnowski about, so this radius and road miles are typically what you find in most contracts and most ordinances. That's where that came from, so that's why you have a radius versus the county, live within the county border. So that was, when I talked with her, that's standard practice, and that's where the distances came from versus the borders of Stephenson County.
If I could follow up, wouldn't it be easier to enforce if it was a governmental geographic, like a county thing, versus X amount of miles from a specific building in a specific town?
It would. I will turn to Deputy City Manager, who oversees HR, so, and the payroll.
Well, that's a very good question, because when you start looking at distances and we're measuring it from the fire, or from the police station or fire station or city hall, they're not centrally located in the city, so you can be skewed one way or another, depending where you put your pen on the map, and in this case GIS could skew it as well. It would be better if they were either all city residents or all county residents, because then you have a geographical boundary that everybody knows and can follow, and there's no question as to whether it's a foot in or a foot out.
And I'll turn it over to one last Attorney Zito on this.
Well, I was going to actually Alderman McClenathan did a great job summarizing the police side of what the ordinance currently said, so I was going to do the same for the on the fire side, just so that the council had a clear understanding as to what's being proposed in this current ordinance. But with regards to Alderman Bordeman's question with regards to how did we come up with the 20, as Manager Crow said, that's kind of industry practices has been to use a mile, a radius has been commonplace. Not to say that you can't deviate from it, as Director Bukis has mentioned some of the benefits potentially of going by using the county boundary as opposed to just arbitrarily placing your pen somewhere in the city and then drawing a 15-mile radius. But again, policy decisions for the council to make. But if I could, just so that we can talk about this and everyone be on the same page, I just wanted to briefly just touch on the fire side to state what it currently reads so that everyone's clear as to what's being proposed here. And again, those are the subparagraphs 2 and 3 on the fire, which currently says that if you're a current old officer who's in management, again, this ordinance strictly deals with management, non-bargaining folks here, and that prior to the effective date you were management of this ordinance, and you have established residency, that you can maintain that residency where you are. You don't have to move right away or anything like that, but if you choose to move, then you have to come within the 15-mile radius requirement, okay? And then in the case of a promotion, whether it's moving up the management chain, or if you're moving from union to management, that you're allowed to with that promotion, you're allowed to maintain your residence provided it's within one of those four townships. But if you choose to move, then you gotta come within the 15 miles there. So that's on the promotion side of things. Okay, so again, it mirrors the police, other than the fact that during the promotion scenario, that instead of using the 20, it uses the currently existing 4 township.
And our recommendations actually go, the 15's less restrictive, because it says Harlem, Lancaster, Florence, so the Creek located Stephenson County, 15-mile radius, which is actually a bigger area than those four townships.
Mayor,
Alderman Clanathan.
to follow up on that, it says "or" on that, so it gives discretion either way to the individual. So, okay, so if they want the more expansive under that reading, they're entitled to that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Follow-up. Are you proposing striking the township language and just going with the 15 just so it's easier?
Yeah, it would be easier.
Mhm.
And if we did what all, we would actually be losing some on the eastern side of the county, as you can see in southern, but we'd be expanding western.
Mayor, we've discussed this before, but I don't know if we discussed it recently, that if we're going to make the changes, and again, it's looking at in the future, not for the past, we talked about having some sort of requirement that under any circumstances it be within the state of Illinois. I'd like to see us entertain some language of that in the future going forward.
Now I will tell you, we have one Chief Johnson, non-union that lives out in the state of Wisconsin.
No, sir, we have 2 one non-union, 2 union members that live in Wisconsin.
And Mayor, and I know it won't impact them, again, unless you're moving, and under the 15, and I mean, it may be a little superfluous because there's hardly any overlap between the 15 and the border, but we did address it in a prior setting.
Madam Mayor? Is there leave
Chief.
for me? I apologize, but I need to get this out. I understand what's going down here, and I'm not at all opposed to coming together with this language, but I again want to point out that it is not fair to look at police having 20 and fire having 15, or vice versa. The number you guys pick. What I want to point out, though, and in your desire to be as least punitive as possible, we have a firefighter X, I'm going to say, that is in the union, that lives outside of the 15-mile radius, that will be promoted, and he will be forced to move within that 15-mile radius in order to accept that promotion. And I'm not here to play against the cops. Chief Barkle and I have had this conversation. He knows I support the police department. But firefighter X on the police department who lives next door to this police officer X that lives next door to this firefighter X, if he accepts a promotion, he will not be forced to move because his radius is 20 and the fire is 15. I really don't care where you go, but if we're gonna grandfather, then we need to find a grandfather. And you say you're gonna grandfather, everybody can stay where they're at, but in reality, this promotion for this firefighter could happen as early as this time next year. So it's really not non-punitive. I mean, this guy, he's gonna be forced to move within. And I guess that's where I'd like for you guys to really consider changing this so it's fair for everybody. And if you're gonna grandfather, then grandfather them and leave them there. Let them promote up the ladder and move it forward from this day on, like you said, move forward. I can support that. I'm sure the unions can support that. I know Todd and I've talked, we can support that. But to me, this is not a good deal for the fire department.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
I know we kind of talked back and forth last meeting about this. If we were to leave fire alone, or let's leave the whole ordinance alone, right now, as it's established, the individual X on it would have to move within the 4 townships or be out of compliance with the ordinance. We're giving everybody on the fire, frankly, an expansion on this from the 4 townships to the 15. How empirically is that not a good deal for the fire department?
Because
Or, I'm sorry, I meant to, or are you saying it's a good deal, but you want better? You want more? Or are you saying empirically expanding from 4 townships to 15 radius miles is not a benefit for your department? Please.
Madam Mayor. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not saying it's a good deal or a bad deal. I'm saying it's trying to be fair and consistent between the 2 public safety departments, first and foremost. I've lived within the 4 townships. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. I kind of side with Eric Borneman on the fact that, you know, I think we work here, we should play here, live here, and I have lived my life that way. Unfortunately, that's not the way that the union contracts have gone. And to say that when you make changes to that ordinance, and again, it was 1995, but it only affected a very few amount of people. We've gone from having 2 staff officers, basically a chief and an inspector, and then 3 captains, to last year we reorganized and we created the battalion chiefs, the district chiefs, and then 2 deputy chiefs. So including the chief, now we have 6. So we have increased that. With the turnover that we've had to promote a lot of these union guys up through the ranks, obviously. They've accepted the responsibility, moved up, and that's how we ended up having one of our district chiefs that was a union member a year and a few months ago. Now he is a district chief and management. That's how that happens, and we've got more people in the future that are gonna come that way. The 15 miles, if that's what you decide, that's fine, but what I wanna point out is that to me, that's fair either way with the cops and the firemen. I don't think it's fair to have 15 for the firemen and 20 for the cops. And I really think we ought to go back to the definition of grandfathering. If we're gonna grandfather, then let's grandfather. Let's let them have what they've got right now and not force them to move within the new change. Make the new hires come in. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but to me, that makes sense. Regardless of the mileage and stuff, where they're living right now, grandfather them in, you can promote up, you're good to go.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
I think you touched on how we got into this situation of non-compliance. And the council, again, is proposing looking forward, not backwards on this. What guarantees do we have that there's going to be better compliance in the future, regardless of what standard we set, and no matter how permissive we are?
I can't predict the future, but I definitely know that the ordinances will be watched a lot closer than what they were. And like I said, until really whenever we made the transition in the fire department to the deputy chief form, it was not an issue. It was not an issue. Everybody lived within the 4 townships. Now that's changed.
Chief, I want to point out that you actually reduced non-union by one with the reorganization. You had 3 captains, you had 3 battalion chiefs, a fire inspector, and so it's actually reduced it by 2.
Correct, correct.
So what drove this, and I know Officer Hartwig was already at the captain level when I got here.
Right.
So when we reorganized, the fact that he lived in Wisconsin at 21 road miles, 20 miles, was not affected by the reorganization.
I agree. I apologize for that. You got to bear with me. We've had multiple multiple title changes in the last year and a half, 2 years. I've gone from being a captain to a battalion chief to a district chief to deputy chief, so I did misspoke there. We have reduced actual numbers of non-bargaining. He is correct there. But again, because of that, you know, we're still had major turnover. We've had 7 and now 8 if you count Chief Allen, resignations in the last 12 months. We've lost 3 retirements and resignation. We lost 3 others, fire department members, 2 other municipalities. So that's almost a quarter of our department. So we're very young and they're pushing up to the top, and they've had the collective bargaining right to live 20-mile radius from the city of Freeport. So we're going to limit our pool of candidates because they're living outside of that 4 townships or 15 miles. And that's where I said if we went to the 20, be fair, and grandfather everybody in, that would eliminate that problem.
And I'm going to caution everyone again as a reminder to please stay away from discussing any references to union proposals that are currently being negotiated. Okay.
I apologize. I was just trying to talk about the past.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Warman.
Mr. Crow, have you been able to research any? You mentioned incentives for employees living in the city. Have you gotten any further in that?
So we've just started I've put that out on on my blogs, our blog site. Rockford's currently giving $5,000 towards residency, a one-time payment. Decatur is offering an additional bonus of $1,000 a year, and we're looking at. I've asked out on the, and it just went out. Like I said, I proposed it. It just went out over the weekend, and I'm waiting for feedback. I'll have more, hopefully, within the next couple of weeks. People tend to respond very quickly on that. I've sent it out to all the city managers and said, what are you doing? I know Decatur, the reason I asked Decatur is Decatur requires all of their employees to live within the city limits. And that was a discussion I had with their city manager.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crow, do we currently have the bonus points intact for promotion for those that actually live within the city?
I would have to, I know that you've proposed it and changed it. We've got changes coming forward.
Yes, we do, for hiring only, is we have residency points for that.
Follow up. Why for hiring only? Why not for promotion? It just seems to make sense that if we're paying these large salaries to our employees, the ones that are actually giving their money back to the city through their tax dollars would be the ones that, you know, we'd say, hey, you're part of our community, whether you're paying for schooling or private schooling or whatever it takes to get them into the city of Freeport. You'd think that would only benefit Freeport.
I guess what we've done in the past is put more emphasis on performance than residency for promotions.
Don't you consider that performance too, though?
And And again, I'm going to caution, we're tipping into a line potentially, again, if we're talking about, just to clarify that, you're referring strictly to non-bargaining?
Non-bargaining.
Okay, I just want to
Just
clarify.
promotion points, that's all.
Promotion of non-bargaining members.
Yes, sir. I thought I clarified that. I'm sorry if I seemed like I was indirect.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Misick.
So I've been listening to this dialogue and taking this in really to best understand what is on the table, what the options are, thinking about the families involved, thinking about the city and really what is best for the city. I can see this really from all the angles. I think what this really comes down to, you have folks who are currently employed as in police and fire departments that perhaps when they joined, they had a dream of being promoted into management and so forth, and following this along. In my place of employment, there was a young man who was mowing the yard at this place of employment. He said, one day, I'm going to be the president of this company. In fact, he did that and served for, I believe, 15, 20 years as the president before he finished and retired. Now, I am all for people having the opportunity to follow their dreams and not have a limit on them. I understand there are needs within the city to have some strict measures and to make it consistent in the city. I also see really it is a need of managing tax dollars. It's also a matter of understanding families. We hired in people from different area communities, and now, Lanark, for example, would not be included in a 15-mile radius, but it is included in a 20, right? And so we're looking at different communities. It's a little bit smaller pool we're looking at with the 15-mile. With all of this being said, I really believe that the dreams of those people and being able to honor them in it, and on the order of retention, I would be happier with a proposal that allowed I don't know the legal ramifications of this. I would be happier with a proposal that allowed for those who are currently serving to not have that hurdle as they went from a union position to management.
Mayor?
Alderman McClenathan.
For legal counsel, isn't that how you drafted this one? So that anybody who's currently in, whether they're non-union or union, they apply by the rules as they currently exist today, and it's just only new hires going forward that would be subject to these, or if somebody decides to move?
Correct. So right now, as written, it is new hires have to, if you're newly hired, you have to comply with the 15-mile radius provision, and then if you decide to move, you voluntarily decide to move, then you have to come within the 15-mile radius provision. But in the case of a promotion, that if you already live within the current rules that are currently in effect right now, so if it's police, if you're within 20 now and you're up for promotion, you can stay within that 20. You can stay at your current house there. And then fire is if you're looking for a promotion to non-management or within the ranks of non-management. If you are within the 4 townships, you can stay within the 4 townships. Or we're giving you the option, the 15 miles, because it's actually a little more expansive than the 4 townships there. So no one has to move right now if you're up for a promotion, as long as you're within the rules currently as they are, our current ordinances.
Okay. Madam Mayor? Oh, sorry.
Did you have a follow-up you had on that? Go ahead.
Yes, just one follow-up as well. So it's a clarification on the radius itself. I don't believe we've addressed this topic, is if there was some catastrophic event in that primary residence and the fire or police, the officer serving had to rebuild, would that also qualify?
And that hasn't been discussed by the council. Ultimately, that would be a policy decision as to what you guys want to, that scenario. Could they rebuild their home right then and there, or would they have to come into compliance at that point? Again, that hasn't been a topic that's been discussed or brought up at all.
Thank you. Last follow-up, Mayor?
Sure.
Sorry. So just on this topic is my personal view would be having ownership of said property. I personally believe that there should be an option for such a case to rebuild.
Alderman Ross.
Okay. I heard something about incentives. Now, if we're going to offer an incentive, shouldn't we brought that out before this ordinance was even written? Because it's the only right thing to do. We don't sweeten the pot. After all the, you done got everything else get shot down. You bring it up on the top and offer it to everybody first, then go with it.
I think if
Maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but
well, no, I just think that it's just ways that
I was
Manager
asked.
Crowe was trying. Yeah.
I was asked to look at what other incentives other communities are doing for moving into residency. So when the question came up, what are we looking at for incentives? I was asked to research how other communities are handling residency. So I was not asked by council. I was asked by council to draft the ordinance as it was. And then after the ordinance was drafted and sent out, I was asked to look at incentives as we go forward. So I'm willing to do whatever council wants me to do here. I was additionally told to draft this ordinance to set up the 15 miles and then after that ordinance was drafted, look at what other communities are doing to provide incentives.
Mayor, the reason why it sparked something, because I've been pretty quiet all night, is that I see that maybe basically I think it's a good idea. To give something, you got to get something. So I think, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Something to think about.
Yeah, that's why he was looking to see what other communities do.
Excuse me?
That's why Manager Crowe was looking to see what other communities do.
Yeah, I understand that. But I'm just saying, I think it's a good idea to do that.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
Yes, listening to everyone's points and going back and forth here, I don't see as where we're at the point tonight to make any decisions. I would feel more comfortable about giving this a little more time. Talk, us council members, maybe talk with the few of the people from the police department, just kind of get a little more grasp on this before we jump to any decisions on this. So I don't think we need to rush into it. I would just I'd make a motion to move this to the next committee of the whole for discussion.
I'll second it.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Well, we have another council meeting before the next committee of the whole meeting. So, and we don't have a meeting, I think, next week, because we've got a couple weeks in between that. It's your motion, but I'd be more comfortable just if we're not moving it forward, because it needs a second reading anyway. I don't think anyone's going to move to suspend the rules to pass it tonight. If we're not moving it to second reading, I'd be more comfortable addressing it again at our next council meeting rather than waiting, until the middle of July to address it again.
Madam Mayor.
I just want to say we do have a motion that's on the floor, so that has been seconded. So to the extent someone wants to change that, if you want to change that, you can withdraw it, or we can do a motion to amend.
I move to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Alderman Ross, you withdraw your second.
Yes, I'll withdraw a second.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
I move to, I make a motion to move this to the next city council meeting for discussion purposes.
Okay, I'll second.
My understanding is that it's still at first reading.
Okay, so then, council, before you is a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Ross, to move ordinance 2019-37 to the next regularly scheduled meeting in continuing of the first reading. Is there any further discussion? Okay, then we will move on to the next item.
We need a vote on that.
If you could call the roll on that, Madam Clerk.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 14 is the first reading of ordinance 2019-38. Could you please read this?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport approving and authorizing the city to enter into a lease purchase agreement with Deere Credit Incorporated for a backhoe loader and an excavator, and the purchase of a trailer from West Side Tractor Sales.
Thank you. Director Kopansky.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The task that's here that I want to discuss is that in the Division of Public Works, we do work at ground level, above the ground, and below ground. And in this item, and with the reorganization of the department, we're looking to right-size our fleet of heavy equipment that does the work for us, namely the backhoes, the front-end loaders, and other pieces of equipment that can help us do the work that is needed for our infrastructure. The last few months, and with the capital budget that was approved in March of this year, I identified a need for replacement of a backhoe and an excavator. And with the excavator, the way that gets moved throughout the city is on a trailer. So with state bids that are in place, I went and met with two manufacturers that have heavy equipment like that. And the city has been using John Deere brand equipment for the last 40+ years. So before you, I would like to go, and we have a backhoe from 1993 that has been in service all that time. It's got age on it and is in need of replacement. So I am proposing to enter into a lease to get a 2019 John Deere backhoe of similar size as to the one that we're looking to replace. With this, the cost would work out on a lease to approximately $6,514.30. And when we would take delivery of the backhoe, which is approximately the last half of August, the backhoe that we would trade in, we would go and get $1 value for and reduce the amount of the lease amount that I just stated. So that takes care of the John Deere backhoe. Next item in this task is the wanting to go and lease an excavator. With the work that water and sewer does underground, there's a need to do that work. And we currently have a backhoe from 1999 that has been doing that work. In talking with staff, they said that an excavator would be more suitable for what we need to go and do. So I met with two firms that provide excavators, and the John Deere had a better price, and the quote for the 5-year lease is roughly $12,667.21 per payment, and that would be 10 payments. And that's on the state bid that we used and was approved earlier this evening for the John Deere lawnmower. And then there's also going to be discussion about a hook lift truck along the similar plan, which is 4 or 5 items down the line here. In addition, with the excavator, with that piece of machinery, moves 3.5 miles an hour. We have to transport it from site to site. And with the trailer, that is something that's not necessarily leased, so it's something that I would like to go and purchase. I've looked at 2 different firms that provide trailers and found a brand and a size that will meet the needs of hauling the excavator around. And the quote that I received on that off of the state bid is for $28,604.80. One thing with the excavator and the trailer, that probably would be available for us for delivery in July. We have soft holds on all those items pending the outcome of the action that would be taken on July 1st. And it's all within the budget that was approved in March of this year.
The other thing, Council, I'll point out that we do have a limit on number of hours of operation. If you looked at the leasing document, it's 1,000 hours of operation per year as we go forward. So that's one with the lease. We have to pay a penalty if we exceed that 1,000 hours. We looked at both the 500 hours and 1,000 hours, and based upon our operation of the backhoe, we decided 1,000 hours was the best option so to avoid any penalties as we go forward.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you, Director. With 27 pages of lease and legal agreements here to look through, I might miss this, but when we're done leasing this for the 5 years or any of the items, are we purchasing? Where do we stand there with the lease then?
Well, let's see, there's 3 ways we can go about it. The one thing we can do is we could go and turn it back in and just walk away. The other option we can do is we could purchase it for that price that's stated on the lease. The last option that we have is that we could go and lease that item again for another period of 36 or 60 months at a reduced rate. One thing, if we would go that route, is that we would be the one that would be operating it the first 60 months, so we have a good track record as to what's been done, how's it acted, has it been problematic, has it been doing fine for us.
Yeah, Manager Carl is going to ask you what's
So
practice for
what the
city.
industry standard is right now for municipalities is that you don't take it beyond the 5 years. In fact, the Caterpillar contract, which is the more expensive contract, Caterpillar will just show up at about 18 months and just swap your, without even telling you. They'll give you like a 12-hour call and say, we're coming down to pick up your machine. But it was more expensive in this area, so.
As long as you stay within their lease hours and you follow all their maintenance?
As long as we're in, yep.
But we do the maintenance, is that correct?
Well, no, I also costed out a extended warranty service for that, but, you know, we will have to do the oil changes, and this extended warranty does not cover, like, tires, or if it's just willful neglect, where someone just beats the hell out of the equipment and doesn't use it within the parameters that it should be used.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
Okay. I see that we're getting an excavator. This will be the first time in the city of Freeport had one. But my question is, the excavator is going to require a little bit more attention to it than a rubber tire backhoe, correct? I mean, that's for the operation of it.
For the operation of it?
Yeah, the use of it, you know, how they use it.
Okay. And I have staff that has worked at other jobs to where they have that capability of operating that machinery.
So we'll have don't get me wrong, I know the workers that we have are very capable of using the rubber tire backhoe. What I'm getting to is there'll be, will there be some training required on the excavator? Because it's a little bit different type of machine.
Correct. There will be training when it gets delivered, and then the joysticks or the levers are similar to what they currently use now. And with the way they build these models is that John Deere has one practice to operate the equipment, Caterpillar has another one, and the equipment has both of these capabilities, and all it is a flick of a switch to go from, okay, I've always operated Caterpillar, even though I'm in a John Deere, I'll throw the switch and I'll have the Caterpillar controls on this John Deere. Or if I've worked on John Deere, I've got the controls and it operates just like how it's been done in the past.
Is I think we have guys that have used excavators prior to being hired here, so they have that experience. We already have that with internal to the staff.
Okay.
What we're trying to look at is what is the best mix of equipment that we can use going forward. And they have, Director Carr and Director Pansky, we actually have a team of guys now within Public Works that are reviewing all our vehicle purchases as we go forward. And so they feel that this is the best mix of equipment that they have.
Okay, so they're, in other words, that the director was saying, they're compatible.
Right, that, the staff, this was brought up, from the staff, that, if we're gonna have to replace equipment, this would be preference.
Director Carr, did you want to add to that?
Right now, all of the guys learn on the backhoe by getting in the backhoe and
Right.
running it. That is going to be the same thing with the excavator. They're going to get in and learn on the job. There may be some minimal training when it's first delivered, but the way the guys are going to learn it is the old-fashioned way. They're going to get in and get their hands dirty.
Right, on-the-job training.
Yep.
So, one more question, may sound crazy, but the excavator we're getting, we're speaking of, I should say, does anybody know what type of reach or boom it has? Because that's going to make a difference there.
We do have those specs in there.
Correct, and it's 19 and a half feet reach.
19? Okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
both between the administration and the staff taking a look at your current needs and your future needs, you believe that these units best fit those needs?
That's correct.
I'd make a motion to move it forward.
Second. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Busker to move ordinance 2019-38 onto the next regularly scheduled meeting. Was there any further discussion, council? Then we will move on to item number 15, which is the adoption of resolution 2019-27. Could you please read this?
Resolution to approve construction and Phase 3 engineering, which is a 20% match for the Peck Path to be divided between the Freeport Park District and Stephenson County.
Thank you, Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. IDOT sends a letter out at the end of all the ITEP grants. Pretty much states that they need a resolution from the city that says that they're at least going to be willing to spend that matching portion. So the resolution you have in front of you is the resolution we would need to use to commit our MFT dollars to that local match.
Since the bid came in, one thing I want to point out is this figure will probably be lower. We got the bids in and they came in lower than expected. The bid was opened, was it Thursday or Friday? And we got notified late Friday that Fisher was awarded the bid at a lower cost.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
do we need to adjust the paperwork to reflect the cost, or just leave it at the rate it is and then you'll fit the bid in accordingly?
We aren't allowed to adjust this cost, even
Okay.
if the bid would have came in at like $3 million. This is all of the funding that ITEP would have allowed us to seek for.
A follow-up, Mayor? This is phase 3, so it's from downtown to the Peck Path, about 2.87 miles to the River Road. Is that this phase? Or
I would
which
call that
phase?
this stage. The phase 3 is the engineering, the on-site engineering portion of it. Phase 2 is design, phase 3 is the construction. It's just the way IDOT names their stages of construction.
Okay, I'll follow. So what do we have left? I mean, we had the prior portions, obviously, that got us down to Tuddy's Crossing here. You know, what do we have left on this portion, this almost 3-mile stretch?
So you're saying once this is completed, what would be after that? We have from River Road, we'll have to go over the top of bypass 20, and then we'll have to go all the way to the Winnebago County border.
Follow up, Mayor? And do we have, there's 3 partners that are involved in this, the city, the Park District, and Stephenson County. On this portion here that we're dealing with tonight, do we have all 3 entities on board with this phase of the project?
We do, for this phase. It's the phases out on the next, the remaining phases that we've got some concerns from the county.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Director Carr, I see, the city, county, and park district are all supposed to be splitting these costs of $380,000 for 25. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I saw, though, on the form that they require 4 original signatures. Whose signatures have to be on there?
So the original forms are the mayor's.
So it'd be like the mayor and city manager and...
I am not an original signature. Going back to the original signatories, it was Chairman Bloom was the original signature, so it'll be Chairman Hadley, the mayor, and the Park District. I believe it was Executive Director.
Are you're talking because there's 4 different copies?
Well, it just said that there had to be 4 signatures, but there's only 3 entities paying. So I was wondering who the 4th signature was. I was confused.
So it's 4 copies of the original signatures. So it's just
4 copies.
we get
of
1
original.
copy, 4 copies go to IDOT. So the mayor has to sign all 5.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Or has
So
to.
there are a lot of signatures from the state over here. If you look, the mayor's the only one that has to sign it. The document,
For us.
it says County Board Chairman, Mayor, Village President. On the other side, it's all the different representatives from within the IDOT.
Okay, I was just reading the legal form that requested the 4 signatures, so sorry for any confusion. But the money is being split fairly, or should say equally amongst the 3 parties, and our share is coming out of MFT funds, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Motion to approve Resolution 2019-27.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Busker to approve Resolution 2019-27. Is there any further discussion, Council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berberet.
Aye.
Borneman. Resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 16 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-28. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an agreement with Fair Graham to provide engineering services for cost estimates for a water treatment plant for well number 11.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm going to ask Director Carr to jump in on this as we go forward. This is the engineering design for Fair Graham for soil borings, geotech report, building design, building foundation design, treatment process, equipment, civil site design, process piping design, the SCADA, which is the network control, pump selection, and chemical storage. This is their portion of that. Dennis, do you want to?
Yes, this also covers the survey they've already completed, some plans, and then the IEPA submittal. Right now, the fee is listed at $405,000.
Questions, Council?
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
This may sound like a dumb question, Manager Crowe, but I've never built a water treatment plant. Is this an usual and customary fee for the engineering services?
No, you're going to see at least 3 more documents. So having built a water treatment facility, we are right in the ballpark. Once we get all done, it's going to be almost $10 million.
Thank you, and I hope you understand for the listening public, this is something that's new to probably most of us council members, and we get thrown these large sums of money, or figures, I should say, and without conferring with our city manager, I wouldn't know if that's a fair sum or not. And I'm sure you're very good at managing the city, and you would say otherwise, but I still think I had to ask the question.
This is a very reasonable cost, and we'll be going with what we're doing with SCADA and everything with the design.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor,
Alderman McClathan.
with this being professional services and not subject to certain requirements, what was the process that we used to analyze and solicit the proposals?
So Fairgram has been the engineering company right from the very beginning, and what happened was our local, as we'll go further forward, they are, since they had been involved in the engineering and design and going forward with all the paperwork, that was one of the reasons we went with Fairgram. They're also considered to be one of the leaders in the community on this. We also had Fairgram go out because our local architects, on the next documents, did not want to participate in the bidding because they want to participate in the building of the project. So that was some of the issues that we had to deal with, is we actually had Winter Construction had done the initial design, basically the picture of what it looked like. Concept, thank you. But they did not want it because they want to bid on the actual building of the project. So we were trying to catch both the expertise we had in putting this together, the decision that we've gone through, the whole process that we've been working through the last 12 months, and still keep that, but also working what's best for the community.
Alderman Ross.
So Manager Cool, now we gotta look for a different builder?
No, so our architect, and you'll be coming up here, Fairgram went out and looked for a different architect, and we gave him, so later on, one of the next resolutions you got coming up is approving both the mechanical and as well as the architectural design. And that was because the local companies didn't want to bid on the actual building of the project, because this is IEPA money. If you're doing the design work, you cannot do the building.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, under item number 17, under indemnification, was there any reason why there was something that was blacked out? There's probably the second paragraph was lined out in the contract.
Did you see? Because Aaron's reviewed all these contracts. I'm not sure which one mine's not blacked out, so.
Item number 17 under
Oh, that's the next resolution.
indemnification and limitation of liability. The second paragraph was blacked out or lined out.
Okay.
Can I ask Fairgram gentleman to step up? Mr. Holder?
That was per your city attorney's review of our contract. You didn't like the language in that, so we struck that out of the contract.
He blacked you out.
You blocked me.
Thank you, Mr. Holder.
Yep.
And yep. So I'm looking at it now. That was an item that I had asked to have removed because it was a limit on liability of their liability. So I didn't want that limit in there.
Good move. Thank you.
Mine doesn't have the one that's blacked out.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution R 2019-28.
Okay, council, before you is a motion made by Alderman Bradshaw, seconded by Alderman Parker to adopt Resolution 2019-28. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
McLanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 17 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-29. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an agreement with Johnson Engineering to provide mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering services for a water treatment plant for well number 11.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
I'll just turn it over to Director Carr.
This is the agreement for the mechanical, electrical, plumbing plans for that same water treatment plant. This contract, or this resolution would be for $70,000.
Questions, council? Is there a motion for adoption?
I'd like to make a motion for adoption of Resolution R-2019-29.
Second.
Burberry.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Berbere for the adoption of Resolution 2019-29. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
And item number 18 is the adoption of Resolution 2019-30. Could you please read this?
Resolution of the City of Freeport authorizing and approving an agreement with Richard L. Johnson to provide architectural services for a water treatment plant for well number 11.
And would that be Director Carr as well?
So this was one of the directions that, as we went forward, since we didn't have the local architects want to, Fairgram and I, and Director Carr and Director Pansy all sat down and said, all right, here's the guidelines we want to go forward with the architect. And then Fairgram went out and selected the architect as we went forward, understanding that the local ones want to bid on the building of the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Carr.
Yes, the services that the architect will provide are the detailed series of plans, ceiling plans, all of the door finishing schedules, everything that you'll kind of find in the architectural plans themselves. The cost of these fees came in about $195,000.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Director Carr, I can't find that total on my paperwork. Is that on a certain page?
It's
Down to Article 3.
Yeah.
It's Article 3 under Architects Compensation 3.1.
My computer just died. I apologize. Thank you. My battery's dead and I forgot the cord.
Would you like to see
No,
the
that's okay. That's okay. I believe those figures. I just couldn't find it and then it just went black. Again, are these usual customary figures? Manager Crowe. Again, for the one person that I know in this room that has built a water treatment plant, are those usual and customary figures?
They are. These are standard, pretty right in there for a plan of this nature.
Thank you. And thank you.
Alderman Berbere.
Manager Crowe, you mentioned before on the two previous resolutions that total cost would be about $10 million. Is that the $9 million plus $405,000, $70,000, $195,000?
That's correct.
Any other areas of expenses that might?
So the other expenses that are going to be incurring is the well house and the drilling of the well, which will run about 1.6, right, to 2 million. Yeah. So that, and then we are also, as part of this, we are putting in piping to both high and low sides. We're installing sewer up in Burchard Hills and expanding the road.
Okay, thank you.
So all those are built into the.
Okay, thank you.
Forgot storm sewer.
Oh, sure, if you want to step up to the microphone.
Just wanted to clarify, going back to the last one, Johnson Engineering, we recommended them, and as well as Richard L. Johnson, because these are partners we've worked with on previous projects. We have working relationships with them, so we're not putting this team together for the first time. Scott Johnson is with Richard L. Johnson. He's here tonight. He'll be the lead architect on the project, and just for comfort's sake, they are the registered architect for Highland Community College, so they've done all the architecture work there for the last 20 years. We've worked with them on those projects as well. So.
But we did have to change because
Yeah.
the original architect, they want to work on bidding buildings.
That is correct. Yep.
Thank you. Any further discussion, council?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution R-2019-30.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Misick to adopt Resolution 2019-30. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
Berberet.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 19 is the approval of the bid that was opened on June 11th for the Old Cherokee Hill Street resurfacing. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. When we were opening the bids, Debbie actually corrected me on this. This is actually not Old Cherokee Hills, but instead it's the Countryside Estates. Kind of slipped past me the first time, but I thought I'd at least clarify. But we had two bidders. The two bidders were Civil from here in town and Martin out of Oregon. And the low bidder between the two was Martin and Company out of Oregon for $309,362.14. It is the staff's recommendation to go with the low bidder of Martin & Co.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
which streets does this cover?
So this covers Wild Oats Trail. It covers Wheatland Terrace, Farmdale Lane, and a little section of Country Court.
Follow-up, Mayor. How much, or what portion of Farmdale Lane does it cover?
All of Farmdale, all of Wheatland, the south section from the last overlay of country to Countryside, and then from Wild Oats from Farmdale up to, I am not going to be able to guess that street name right now.
The cul-de-sac, yeah. That goes to the south of it, right there.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And it was about approximately 10% lower bid by, the bid by Martin and Company is approximately 10% lower, give or take a few thousand?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, Director Cart, this may sound crazy, but did they accumulate this in mileage to see how, when you add all the streets together, did they do anything like that?
I did before it was bid, but I do not have that on me right now.
Okay.
So with this, the one thing I'll point out to council, we'll now have work in 4 wards that are going on. Ward 1 with Woodside. We have Ward 3, we're finishing up Shawnee. This one in Ward 2 and Float in Ward 3 and 5.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. When will this work start, Director Carr?
All we did is put a final date on it. We didn't want to restrict any kind of contractors. And this one, actually, the Colton Place Recycling Company that's coming down is actually coming from northwest of Minneapolis. So somehow they have better prices than some of a little more local firm. But I'm not sure when they're going to be down. I'm going to guess that they'll be coordinating a series of jobs that are going to end up down here. But we've got a final date in October that they have to be finished by.
October 2019 for clarification?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
Yeah, what's the depth of the project? How far down are they going?
They'll be processing 4 inches of, it'll be 2 inches of asphalt and then about 2 inches of virgin aggregate. they'll be processing all 4 of those with asphalt. They'll re-crown the road. Right now, those roads are all really flat. They might be like at a 1% or a 2% crown, and so they're going to bump it up to about a 4, and then they're going to overlay it with 1.5 inches asphalt.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
I'd move to accept the bid as recommended.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Brashaw to accept the bid as so stated. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 20 is approval of the bid for a hook lift truck. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Back when we were setting up our capital improvement plan, the major item that we were looking at this year was the hook lift truck. We were doing a little bit of research and back and forth with a couple of the different manufacturers, and our body style was changing a little bit due to some issues that some other communities had with the single axle in the back with these leaf-X. So instead of going with the single axle, which would be our 5-yard truck, we're going to go with the tandem axle, so that way we can kind of save some of our leaf springs. So we put that out for bid with both a V-body on the back as well as a leaf box. The V-body we will then use for our asphalt work, as well as we can throw salt in the winter and use it for our salt spreading. But we got 3 bids in. One of them wasn't for the whole truck, so we had to get rid of that bid, which left us with 2. Of those 2, Monroe was the cheaper one. However, when we were starting to compare the different items that were on these trucks, one of the big reasons why we were kind of pushing these trucks, or we were moving the way of these trucks, is to do our leaf program as well. And then looking at the differences in the trucks, the Bunnell truck actually has the 20-yard capacity, which is what we were hoping for, as opposed to the 17-yard capacity the Monroe truck has. So when we started to kind of compare that difference versus the length of the V-box spreader, it actually proves out that the Bunnell Industries truck is the one that we would like to seek permission to move forward with.
The other thing is, you'll notice in the specs, or maybe it wasn't, is that it also has a higher grade metal in the box and a little bit longer plowing blade on for us. So overall, it's a better truck. Now, the thing that Dennis didn't mention is when we went to confirm the order before last week going forward, they said the delivery would not be until February timeframe. So we had planned in our capital improvement plan to purchase one this year and one next year. We would like to go ahead, if you approve the bid, the second thing I'm going to ask you to do is approve us for 2. I've already reached out to the local area banks. As we get 2 approved, we'll go through a leasing process through the banks to lease these vehicles. So because we had, in the capital plan, we had planned on doing one this year and one next year, and this will cover both of them during those 2 years. And Director Bucas and I have run the numbers, and we are able to work this.
Mayor?
Alderman Ross.
Okay. The Bunnell is going to be a whole lot better. I mean, better quality, better everything. I know from my own experience with Bunnell. You're going to be so much happier, and the longevity is going to be there too. So I'd like to make a motion to go ahead with the Bunnell.
Second.
So that approves the bid, but I'm asking for 2 authorization to go forward in order to.
I'll go ahead with 2 then. I'd like to make a motion for 2.
So is there a second to
My
that?
second still stands.
No. So before you, council, is a motion made by Alderman Ross, seconded by Alderman Busker for this approval for the hook lift truck ×2. Is there any further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Borneman.
Manager Crowe, you anticipate receiving a discount if you purchase two?
That was the discussion Director Carr had with him. There is a discount if we order two.
They did not tell me what the discount was. They just said that.
But, Mayor,
Find out.
along those lines, you would have been coming back to us recommending the second one in the next year anyway. So the only difference is you want to take advantage of this undetermined discount at this stage?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
But neither one of them will show up until next February? Is that correct?
At least February.
The issue is to put the leaf box on, they got to put both right and left seat drive. So that's taking a little bit longer. So when the leaf box goes out versus a 3-man crew, we'll actually have a 2-man crew that'll work on this. One will be operating the arm to pick up the leaves. The other one will be driving from the left-hand side.
Alderman Brashaw?
Madam Mayor, I withdraw my request to speak because my question was answered.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Misick.
Just a comment. I'm very pleased to see this discussion with the hook trucks and knowing that overall having the capacity to move in the different seasons and utilize that equipment is very good for long term, and it's worth some of the short term pain of getting those things set up and even the delay that comes with that. So I think we understand what those challenges are, and I'm definitely in support.
Any further discussion, council? Madam Clerk, please take the roll on the approval of this bid.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, item number 21 is the approval of the quotes from Thayer to switch the 5 buildings to LED. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The one thing I want to tell council is we got updated bids, and the price has gone up due to the tariffs that have been in, but it's only gone up by $1,100, so it's now $30,521. The original, that's with the offsets from the program from ComEd. The overall price was at $63,000, and with the paperwork that there submits, it'll be lowered to $30,521.11. We did verify that the payback on this is, if we were paying for our electric bill, payback would be a year and a half to 2 years. Without that, our payback, we believe, is in the 6-year period due to maintenance issues. Reduced maintenance issues. And this puts, we are getting bids on the museum and the airport, so we may be coming back later with you, which are 2 buildings we do pay electric on.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
He was present last week when we moved this forward for approval, because we couldn't take any action. They're not willing to honor their prior price.
Well, that was, when we moved it forward, that's when they locked in the price for us.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. We discussed this at length at our committee of the whole meeting, and in the long run, it's going to be a huge cost savings to the city of Freeport, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the quote from Thayer, however you pronounce
Thayer,
it.
yeah.
Thayer, in the amount of $30,521.11.
I'll second
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Parker to approve the quotes for Thayer. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 22 is the consideration of the Gilson Mooring contract. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the one that we presented to you in front, council at the committee of the whole. This is for the 95-gallon toter for trash and 95-gallon toter for recycling, which are sitting in the back. This is for the first year $16, second year $16.50, third year $17.16, fourth is $18.58. There will be an additional city charges on this. This is what we're getting from the contractor. We are going to take this. It runs out to a total of $25 million over the 55,055,100 over the 10 years. We are going to be drafting an updated contract with them. We had talked with them about if we decide to close the transfer station, we may be able to get a reduction in cost in the out years as we are going forward in Gills and Mooring. And they are present here for the bid, so for approval of this. This is, we believe, is Director Bucus and I spent the last 5 months talking back and forth, going back and forth, and we believe this is the best bid we can get.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. If Maury and Gill's representatives are here, could we have them step up to the podium?
Sure. Fellas, can you come up?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Did you have a
Madam
question?
Mayor? Yes.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. At this time, I understand our lift station is costing approximately $6 per household. Is that per month?
Yes.
And may I continue? Thank you. My follow-up question is this. If the lift station closes, say, in 2 or 3 years, will that amount be taken off of each constituent's bill? If there's that or
Yeah, I mean, that'll be the starting number, you know. There'll be, you know, there's automatic escalators in the contract, so we'll have to kind of do the math, but that'll be the basis of the math that we do.
I appreciate that. And one more follow-up. My explanation is this. I've had several constituents call me already. We've had several increases on water sewer charges, infrastructure charges, which has nothing to do with you. And I have yet to face some of my public with an increase in garbage costs as it is, which will also substantially increase their water sewer bill. So I'd like to kind of give them a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, that if our lift station closes, that perhaps their bill will go down sometime and I won't get quite so much hate mail in my inbox. Thank you.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
Just something.
Yeah, Alderman Borneman.
This is, I get it, this is a projection, but for the home counts, and maybe this is for Mr. Crow, they remain the same in 9,700 throughout all 10 years here?
We'll adjust it as we go forward. That's one thing. As the 9,700, originally the contract was working off 9,900 homes. So like one of the things that's happening is like we've issued 3 building permits in the last 2 weeks for homes. So, we'll see some of the numbers. We're going to demo other homes as we go forward. So those numbers will adjust, and we'll work within the contract for Gills Mooring as we go forward on that.
Mayor,
Alderman McClathan.
Council, how do you address or anticipate addressing the language for renegotiation with the landfill issue? I don't expect verbatim, but I mean, I want to make, is it going to be something that you're saying, obviously I don't think we can, put in a fixed figure, tonight in regards to it fully, but are you anticipating some language that will open up the contract, or what are we looking to do here?
So ultimately, if there would be language in there that something to the effect of, to the extent the transfer station closes, that, the parties agree to work in good faith to discuss a reduction in, the monthly service charges to customers, something to that effect, there to bring everybody to the table, that the triggering point would be the closure of the transfer station, and that the parties then at that time are to work and negotiate in good faith to reduce, look at some sort of reduction in charges to the residents.
Follow-up. what would be the anticipated remedy in the event that that triggering event does take place, but the parties are at an impasse? Or is that something that we still need to discuss?
It'd probably be something that we'd have to discuss. I think it was just conceptually talked about at the most high level that if the transfer station closes, that, hey, let's sit down and talk about, if there can be a reduction in price.
And that's basically, it was a very high level discussion, probably only 3 minutes of the discussion we had last week.
And, Mayor, I just bring it up because I want to make sure that both parties have flexibility at in the event that does happen there, that everybody's not locked in one way or the other, that it can be, the change in circumstances can be adequately addressed.
Well, the language that'll be in there, obviously, you guys will approve, we'll discuss it, and both parties will approve it, so we'll all agree with what we're working with as far as language in the unlikely event that would ever come to pass.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for negotiating a contract that you believe is fair to you and which we hope is fair to our constituents. And I wasn't trying to beat you up earlier, just we have to make the decisions that we think is the best for Freeport moving forward. And I'm really happy with my garbage man. He's a great guy. We like the toters. I'm hoping that they will help clean up Freeport. And I have great hopes that it will be a successful program for all. I am hoping for a slight reduction in cost, like I said, if the lift station is closed. I guess I did have one more question, and that was if somebody requests a second toter, how much of an increase will that be per household? Say if it's a large family and they need more than one.
It's a single, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a single $75 additional cost, right? For an additional toter?
For the container, that would assume they were gonna purchase it, I would
Right.
think. Yeah, I don't.
What you gave us originally on the original bid was an additional, I think $10, or it was, I forget the cost, it was like $10. They could either purchase it, or there was a cost of $10 because you had to pick up an additional toter.
I could say what a lot of the communities are doing when a family needs an additional
Toter.
equipment, they're charging them an additional service, and just adding, saying, oh, here's another trash, here's another recycling. That's how a lot of the towns are doing it.
So
One follow-up, then my question would be then, if it was $16 for the first year, would they pay an additional $16 per month?
yeah, I don't know. We'll have to. That's what he's recommending going forward for a second toter. We'll work. We have not discussed the cost on the second toter. We'll make sure that's in the contract coming back to you.
And one more follow-up. I know I asked this question in our general discussion, but since I didn't have the gentleman here, I wasn't sure exactly the parameters. Will there still be garbage stickers available for purchase for loose bag of garbage at a house next to a toter say the understanding it's Christmas time and they have a lot of wrapping paper in an extra garbage bag? And if so, will they be about the same amount of money, like $2 a sticker? Are you doing that still, or won't you have that available?
We haven't discussed that a lot because it's been something that's been, in play for so many years. But, it's something that we'd have to put in there, as far as if people wanted extra. These things are so big that it's gonna surprise you how little the extra stickers will come into play.
So the standard pickup right now is 3 bags. Those toters will take 6 to 7 bags.
Okay,
That's a lot of capacity.
a lot of garbage, right?
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
Manager Crow, earlier in the discussion tonight, you mentioned that this is just the figures for the contract. What other fees are we putting on?
So right
the
now,
city?
we are charging, so this is not Gills or Moorings fees. These are the city's fees. So we charge 16 cents to process the work, and then we have an additional fee. So on any given month, we have 300 people that don't pay for their garbage pickup. So we still have to pay the cost of Gills and Moorings, so we have an additional fee built into cover that cost. And we haven't been charging enough over the past, and Director Bucus and I looked at it, initially starting out at 75 cents, an additional fee, and then moving up from there.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Ross.
Oh, sorry, Art. Alderman Ross.
Yeah. When will you be, start distributing the totes within the city?
We're anticipating the program starting like October 1st, most likely.
Okay, what,
So we'll be distributing them,
Last 2 weeks in September, right?
pardon me?
Last 2 weekend,
Correct.
2 weeks in September.
so follow up. So it, let's just say October 1st. So will the increase start October 1st, or is it gonna start before then?
We'll set that after we get the contract signed. It'll go into effect upon a final approval of the contract.
Okay, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it goes into effect with the approval of the contract by both council and Gills.
Okay.
Alderman Parker.
Quick question. Somebody asked me this the other day, and I wasn't positive my answer. Will you be putting loose garbage into them totes, or they'll be still being put in bags?
Strongly recommend that residents still use bags. It just makes everything cleaner.
That's what I told them, but I wanted to make sure.
Less
Thank you.
blowing, and it's just
Okay,
the
thank you.
way to do it, keep things clean.
I have a toter right now, and if I ever have bag break open, you get garbage in the bottom and it starts sticking out, and then you gotta come in and wash it out.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Burberry.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager Crow, it looks like currently it's either $12.27 a month or $12.63 a month. $12.63 a month is across the board fee right now?
That's correct.
Thank
And that's including our
That
fees.
includes our fee, okay. And when was the last time that was changed or adjusted?
It's been a little over 2 years
3 years.
since last time we raised our portion of it.
Okay, and going from that number to $16 a month proposed is a steep jump, and it kind of levels out year after year. And I concur with Alderman Brashaw's observation that we have added some other fees, water fees, electricity fees, to our citizens, and this is another increase. And if I understand what's happening, it's not the city collecting this, it's the refuse collectors themselves, so that I don't think our citizens should be considering this, that we're sticking it to them for a big increase to get more money for garbage. We're actually paying, maybe not even full costs.
No,
to the operators.
the operators are not taking full cost.
Right.
They were able to bring their price,
So-
because the initial cost that they gave us was over $20.
We need to tell that story so people don't feel that when they get their next water bill, that we're sticking it to them again. So I think we need to be very cautious about how we say this. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Borneman.
is there any way for somebody who already has a toter to receive a consideration or discount if they have the exact same toters at their residence? Is that a thing?
Do you you haven't distributed these toters out yet, have you?
So there aren't any.
But, I mean, there's individuals.
Like everybody to be uniform in what we give to them. That way it's gonna fit our truck needs.
Okay, even if they have a 96-gallon exact same toter?
Correct.
That's all I got.
So what are you looking for from the council tonight, Manager Crow?
Approval of the bids so we can go forward and negotiate the contract. We'll bring the contract back. Took us 5 months to get to the bid price, and then we'll hopefully have the contract turn around in 4 weeks, 5 weeks at most.
Alderman Berberet.
I would make such a motion. I've seen this operation going forward other places. It's very efficient. People will really appreciate it once it gets in place. I think it will help keep our city cleaner without bags sitting around that animals get into or people just throw out there. If everything's in there and you got a one-armed bandit or two-armed bandit coming down the street picking this thing up, it'll be a much cleaner city of Freeport. So I'd make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Alderman Berberet, seconded by Alderman Borneman for the consideration for the contract as Manager Crowe stated. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
Berberet.
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
And the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, fellas. Now we'll move on to department head reports. Finance.
Thank you, Honor. Just for information, our auditors will be here next Monday, and they'll be here for the full week doing their field work. And so that's going to be keeping us pretty busy. And we also received last Friday the draft GAS 367 and 68 reports for the police pension and fire pension funds. So we'll be reviewing those as well and then getting those back to our actuary. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Community development.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have recently received building plans for 2 new homes to be constructed in Freeport and are issuing permits for those. Both developers hope to break ground within the next few weeks. Up until last year, you might recall, there was approximately a 10-year period where there were no new homes built in Freeport. In the last 18 months, we're up to number 4 now, including these 2. So excited for them to get started this summer.
Thank you. That is exciting. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just going to let the public know that next Tuesday and Wednesday we're going to be closing a small block of Lancaster Road between what I believe is Queen Street and Henderson, right there by the Dan Foss parking lot. We got to put in a little bit of storm sewer repair work, and so we're going to have to shut the whole road down for what should be 2 days. But you can, you still have access coming up through Queen Street and then out onto Henderson. So it'll just be blocking off the main road there of Lancaster.
Thank you. Fire.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, but I have nothing tonight.
And police.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to recognize last Friday, June 14th, we had Lieutenant Aaron Dykeman graduate from the Northwestern Staff and Command class. It's a 10-week higher level graduate course class. So I just want to recognize him and congratulate him on that. That's the last of our command staff. We've all been through that Northwestern class.
And water and sewer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to go and give an update on the work we're doing on Float Street. Contractor has done the sanitary sewer install on Float from South to Empire, and today they started on the water main portion of the project, and they will do that from South to Empire. After that's been done, they will go from Empire to Galena, which will then complete the project. So work is taking place.
Wonderful. Thank you. Kurt, IT. All right. And library.
Good evening. First, I wanted to thank the mayor personally for some excellent appointments to my board. It's been this last week was the first time out of all 8 board meetings that I had full attendance from all of my board members, and it was very exciting for me. So thank you, and also for accepting her appointments. So it's going to be great over there now. And the only other thing I want to talk about is our summer reading club kicked off last weekend, and well, a full week now. And we, in the first week, registered 630 kids for the program between inside the building and outreach, and 200 of those are coming from the Y, with library staff members actually going to the Y to administer the program. And last summer, our total for the entire summer was 604. So just in 1 week, we've already surpassed last year's registration. So I'm excited to give you the final report, but that's not going to come until August or September. But that's all I have tonight. Have a good night.
That's great news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to introduce Kirsten Hines. She's our ICMA fellow. She's going to be here for 2 years. She has the joyous job of working pre-disaster mitigation grants and flood mitigation of the third over in the east of the Pecatonica. She's going to be heading up those, as well as the census, our full count committee. She is heading that up, and so welcome on board. She is living within the city, so just for everybody's information. Welcome member of the team.
Thank you. Just a few things to let the council know. There's lots of activities going to be happening soon this weekend. On Friday, if you are a yoga person, at the Lincoln Douglas Debate site is National Yoga Day, and it will start at 5:30. And on Saturday, the Northwest Illinois Amateur Radio Club and the Stephenson County Repeater Association is participating in a nationwide field day at Oakdale Forest Preserve from 1 to 5 on Saturday. Also, at Crate Park at 4:30 is an anti-bullying rally, if you'd like to be a part of that, as well as the egg breakfast, which I'm sure several of you have been a part of in the past. So from 6:30 to 11:30 at the fairgrounds is the egg breakfast this Saturday, and then they are partnering with the blood drive. With this community is in dire needs of having blood donations, and so if you choose to do that, your breakfast will be free. And then also a reminder that in the downtown is the Dairy Days Parade put on by the Stephenson County Farm Bureau, and that is Sunday at 1 o'clock. So avail yourself to those things that are happening all weekend. And so that leaves me with Alderman McClanathan.
Nothing further, thank you.
And Alderman Ross.
Yes, the only thing I have tonight is June 20th, this Thursday, we have a Third Ward Neighborhood Watch meeting at the VFW, which is on the in the arcade at the end of Shawnee Street. Come one, come all, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Parker.
Nothing further.
And Alderman Busker.
A reminder of the Fifth Ward Neighborhood Watch meeting tomorrow evening at First Church of the Nazarene at Carroll and Empire. That'll be at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Alderman Brashaw.
Nothing this evening.
And Alderman Mysick.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you, Alderman Berberet.
Nothing, Your Honor.
And Borneman.
I have spoken enough this evening. Nothing for me.
Thank you. And next would be public comments. Tommy.
To you, I hear the sale that by it's closing. That's true, Joey Miller.
I'm sorry, Tommy, I couldn't hear what you said.
Well, they had they had that
Did you say Save a Lot?
yes.
Well, by Facebook, but I don't know if I believe everything on Facebook, so I don't know if anyone has that information given to them by the city, to the city.
Well, they said because the manager said that he said something about they didn't pay for the building or something.
Yeah, I don't know
They
any of those
said-
details unless Manager Crowe knows something that I don't.
I just wanted to call the Save Lot and ask the manager about it.
Yep, you can call them and let us know. Is there any other public comments? If not, item number 28 is executive session. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
Pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
Thank you. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Ross. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on entering into executive session?
McClanathan?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Busker?
Aye.
Brashaw?
Aye.
Mysick?
Aye.
Berberet?
Aye.
And Borneman.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 8 to 0.
Thank you.